Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're shining a spotlight on a mystery that has completely baffled economists, marketers, and, let's be real, probably even your own family members. We're talking about Generation X, the quiet middle child of finance. You see, their money psychology is just completely unlike any other generation out there, and to truly understand them, we have to look at the unique history that shaped literally every single dollar decision they make. Think about it. Do you actually know what drives their dollar decisions?
Okay, let's dive into this. Because you know what's really weird? We absolutely obsess over boomers and their real estate. We endlessly analyze millennials and their avocado toast. Gen Z and their side hustles get entire think pieces written about them every single week. But then there's this whole generation, born between 1965 and 1980, just sitting quietly in the middle, managing their money in the strangest ways possible, and practically nobody talks about them. So it creates this totally baffling paradox, right? Think about your Gen X coworker who has quietly amassed way more wealth than millennials could even dream of, yet they behave like they're exactly one paycheck away from absolute disaster. Or, your uncle who has 50 grand sitting in a savings account but absolutely refuses to replace his 15-year-old Toyota. Or maybe that friend who drops $500 on concert tickets but aggressively clips coupons at the grocery store. It seems completely contradictory, right? But it's actually not.
Section 1. The Paradox and the Paradigm Shift. Economic Betrayal.
To really understand this paradigm shift, we have to recognize that these behaviors aren't just random, quirky habits. They are highly rational adaptations to a profound economic betrayal. Let's picture a timeline here. It's 1983, you're a 10-year-old kid, and your dad takes you to the bank. You watch him deposit his paycheck from the exact same company he's worked at for 15 years. The teller actually knows him by his first name. He's got a guaranteed pension, a savings account that pays real interest, and the mortgage, well, that's going to be paid off in exactly 12 years. The formula makes perfect sense. Work hard, save money, retire comfortably. Now, flash forward to 2008 on our timeline. You're 35 years old. You followed the formula perfectly. You did everything right, and you just watched your 401k get violently cut in half, your home value absolutely crater, and your supposedly secure company lay off people who had been there for 20 years.
And that brings us to absolutely the most crucial realization for this generation. The formula was a lie. This single realization in 2008 essentially broke their brains. It completely shattered the financial foundation they were taught to believe in, and it permanently shaped the way they view security, trust, and risk.
Section 2. Manifestation 1. Defense and Insurance. Preparing for Disaster.
Now, this historical betrayal didn't just make them cynical. It directly birthed their modern saving and working habits, making them the ultimate financial survivalists. Psychologists actually have a specific term for this: defensive pessimism. It basically means you assume everything will go wrong, so you prepare obsessively, and then, you're covered when it actually does. It sounds exhausting, for sure, but this exact psychological mechanism is what keeps Gen X financially alive. They're not just being negative. They watched their parents' pensions disappear, they graduated right into a recession, and they bought houses right before a historic crash. Their paranoia? It's actually just validated realism.
And this leads to a pretty wild contradiction. According to 2023 data from the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies, a massive 70% of Gen X say they are utterly terrified about retirement. Yet, at the exact same time, they boast the second highest 401k contribution rates of any generation. They honestly don't believe the system will work for them, but their defensive pessimism forces them to max out their contributions anyway. It's wild.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is Gen X actually invented the modern side hustle, way before it had a cute name. Federal Reserve data shows they have higher rates of secondary income than boomers or millennials. But here's the kicker. They almost always keep their 9-to-5 day jobs. They aren't doing this out of pure entrepreneurial ambition to live out their dreams. No, it goes right back to that 1990s downsizing trauma, watching loyal employees get walked out of the building with cardboard boxes. Their Etsy shop or consulting gig, that is pure survival insurance. They are building escape tunnels while making entirely sure to keep the main exit wide open.
Section 3. Manifestation 2. Trust and Experiences. What is worth it?
So let's shift gears a bit to how Gen X decides what, and perhaps more importantly, who is actually worth their hard-earned money. Marketers are constantly confused by this generation. On one hand, Gen X has zero loyalty to institutions. I mean, they will job hop without hesitation and quit a Fortune 500 company via a 2-sentence email. But on the other hand, an Adobe study found they are 34% more likely than millennials to stick with brands from their youth. They'll drive all the way across town for the coffee shop where the owner knows their order, or keep buying the exact same Levi's jeans. Why? Because institutions laid them off with the sterile formulator. But their favorite jeans or that local coffee shop, they never lied to them. They trust people and products, not corporations. Which brings us to a really fascinating number, $3,000. According to Eventbrite data, that is roughly how much Gen X spends every single year on concerts, travel, and live events. They are incredibly financially paranoid, yet experientially extravagant. And the psychology driving both of these behaviors is exactly the same. They save obsessively because systems can't be trusted, and they spend on experiences because physical stuff can't be trusted either. Your house can go underwater, your car loses its value the second you drive it off the lot, but the memory of a 1994 Pearl Jam concert, nobody can ever repossess that. In an unstable economy, experiences give a definitively better return on investment than things, because a memory is entirely untouchable in a market crash.
Section 4. The Financial Survivalist Playbook, Managing Risk and Debt.
Okay, let's look at the actual mechanics of how this generation actively manages risk, debt, and their personal data. When it comes to getting help, the relationship is deeply complicated. Cerulli Associates data reveals they're the least likely generation to use traditional financial advisors. They're highly anxious about messing up, sure, but they watch their parents trust experts with pensions and lose everything. So they rely heavily on DIY self-education. They build these elaborate spreadsheets, they read all the financial books, and they verify everything twice. It's not arrogance. If we frame this DIY approach correctly, we see it as simply financial self-defense.
Their approach to debt is honestly incredibly strategic. Experian notes they carry the highest total debt, but look at how they categorize it based on University of Michigan insights. Mortgages? Those represent control, predictable, fixed payments, clear timelines. They will happily leverage a massive $400,000 mortgage for an appreciating asset. But credit cards? Oh, that's chaos. That is a never-ending quicksand of danger. They absolutely refuse to carry a balance for a couch or a vacation because they watch 1980s consumer debt completely swallow their parents whole.
And this brilliantly illustrates how that exact mindset bleeds perfectly into their relationship with technology. According to AARP data, 61% of Gen X maintains physical paper files of important documents compared to just 34% of millennials. Keep in mind, Gen X literally built the internet. They aren't technologically illiterate, but they've also lived through enough catastrophic blue screens of death to know that digital promises can just evaporate.
They practice what we like to call redundancy by design. They use the digital banking app, absolutely. They use cloud storage, sure. But they also want the physical paper statements safely tucked away in a fireproof safe. They trust digital technology to work most of the time, but they trust physical paper to work all of the time. It's genius-level redundancy born directly from surviving multiple catastrophic system crashes.
Section 5. Playing a rigged game. Validated identity.
Let's synthesize all of these fascinating behaviors into a singular, validated identity for this generation. When you put the pieces together, Gen X money psychology isn't confused or contradictory at all. They are financial survivalists specifically adapted to an economy that promised them one thing and then delivered another. Think back to that kid in the bank in 1983. They learned the lesson that hard work equals security. But they also learned the hard way that the system can change the rules whenever it wants. So today, they still play the game, they still max out the accounts and show up to work, but they never, ever forget that the game is rigged.
So, here is the real question to leave you with today. In an economy that increasingly resembles a casino, is Gen X's financial paranoia actually a mental burden, or is it literally the only rational way to play a rigged game? Think about that for a second. What unique money habits have you noticed in yourself or the people around you? Does this survivalist mindset ring true? Drop your own financial habits and observations in the comments below. We'd love to read them. And if you want more deep dives and psychology-based explainers just like this one, make absolutely sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Because remember, your money habits aren't random. They're responses to the world that shaped you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.